if you take a woman who is super busy and like just holding it all together and then throw in this sort of dip in hormones, this cocktail of things that throw that balance off, then all of a sudden what has been manageable suddenly becomes sort of untenable. It becomes overwhelming. It feels like you can't cope with what you were just getting by with before.
Welcome to Thriving in Menopause, brought to you by Prevention Magazine. I'm Zoe Mernier, the editor of Prevention. Thank you for joining me for episode 5 of season 11. Today on the podcast, we're very excited to be joined by integrative life coach and author Danielle Colley. Danielle has recently written the book The Chocolate Bar Life, which is full of brilliant advice on how we can create better balance in our lives. So many of us are struggling through this period of our lives, just trying to get through our to-do list. But there is a way that we can carve out time for ourselves to start living the lives that we want and deserve. Danielle, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so tell us about the premise of your book, The Chocolate Bar Life.
Sure. So I was a stressed out solo parent. I was a freelance journalist, so my life was this constant roller coaster of up and down, too much work, not enough work, loads of stress. I was completely strung out and frazzled. And in a conversation, somebody said to me, you need your life to be more like a Mars bar. You need to find the balance of work, rest and play. And I thought, oh, that's pretty cute. And I stuck it in my pocket. But I also was like, what does that even mean? How do you do that? I am so busy. I am so like on that hamster wheel that trying to create something other than survival, just it was so foreign. And then, I mean, my life took a couple of curly turns. There's no doubt about it. Before I came back to that idea of the Mars bar, I left my work in journalism. I retrained as a coach, not with the idea of becoming a coach in the outset, with the idea of getting myself out of a grief hole. I'd lost my father. I was burnt out from my freelance work on my own as a parent, and I really needed something to help me to get off the couch, get out of this big hole. And so I went and trained as a life coach. What I found after a time working in that space, and I was working with people in leadership, C-suite, entrepreneurs, everyone was experiencing many of the same feelings that I was feeling. And so I realized that this sort of pervasive drive that so many of us have, because it's not necessarily coming from somewhere external, this push to succeed, this push to do more, this push to prove ourselves. It's often this really intrinsic thing. Yeah. So I found that so many people were experiencing what I had been experiencing, and this Mars bar idea sort of kept sort of floating to the surface. And so the way that it came about was, if you look at a Mars bar, and the layers of nougat, caramel, and chocolate, they're not in equal ratios. There's more nougat than there is caramel. There could definitely be more caramel, I think. We should take that up with Mars. I've had a chat with them. And then the chocolate really is just a fine sort of coating over the whole thing. But when you bite into it and all of those elements are present, it's like, oh, yeah, it's like this symphony in your mouth, right? It's the magic mouthful.
Yeah.
So if we then start to look at these elements of work, rest and play like that, they don't need to be equal ratios. They're never going to be. The idea of life balance, it's a unicorn because we imagine balance to be a seesaw that is evened out.
Yeah.
But if we see it as having these elements present in life, then that creates this more delicious mouthful. So that's kind of how it all came about. And just through my work, I just really started to work more and more into this philosophy because people could really get behind it because it was steeped in chocolate.
Yeah, exactly. You had me at chocolate bar life. I mean, yes, as you say, as midlife women, even taking menopause completely out of the equation, we've just got so much on our plates at this time. And I think, as you say, like for many of us, we're just like, how would I even achieve that? What are some of the ways that all these competing demands that are going on in our lives affect us sort of mentally, physically, emotionally?
Sure. Life is getting faster, right? Life is getting busier. I think that, it's, as you say, taking perimenopause or taking hormonal fluctuations out of the equation just for a moment, just looking at what we're doing in a day. So majority of us are working full-time or at least part-time, running homes. We are managing the mental load as we hear talked about so often. So there's the mental load, then there's our own sort of physical load. There's like what we're actually doing in a day and just jamming more stuff in. But there's also what's happening for us sort of physically and biologically. And we're basically trying to juggle so many balls all the time that, I mean, it's absolutely exhausting. It really is exhausting.
Yeah, it is. It is. So, I mean, are you finding the women that you're dealing with as a life coach, what sort of issues are they presenting to you with?
So, as I said, there's this like intrinsic feeling of pressure, this intrinsic desire to do more, achieve more, succeed more, make more money. The cost of living has gone up, cost of having kids has gone up, so there's definitely a lot of factors that are not just in our heads, like there's all of those sort of lifestyle factors that are happening as well. But I think that the thing that I see that I think is like one of the most dangerous, if you will, is this internal drive to prove ourselves or to prove something. And for whatever reason, I think that is like it gets set quite early on in our lives, what drives us, what forges our ambition, what forges our beliefs about what success looks like or should feel like. I think that society plays in a lot to that sort of perception as well. So I see a lot of people who are flat out on a treadmill without taking time to look around and ask, is this actually really what I want? Like, does my life feel good to live, or am I just ticking the boxes?
Well, let's talk about burnout because they kind of go hand in hand, don't they? I mean, why is this so common in midlife women? Does perimenopause actually kind of play a role in us burning out?
Definitely. And, the recent stats at the beginning of the year came out from Mercer HR saying that 8 out of 10, right, 80% of people are going to be experiencing burnout signs this year, burnout symptoms in 2024, right? So we're reaching the end of 2024 now, which means that probably everybody's got their flags. Yeah, the flags are waving. So it isn't just a women thing, right? There's a lot of people feeling the pressure. Burnout can happen in a lot of different contexts as well, not just in our careers. Obviously, we can have relationship burnout, we can have parental burnout, we can have health burnout, we can have financial burnout, right? It happens in lots and lots of different contexts. Yeah. And if we think about what the sort of signs and symptoms are of burnout, we can see that they really do sort of have a lot of crossover with signs and symptoms of perimenopause. So, that those feelings of, so the three sort of major signs of burnout are sort of compassion fatigue, right? So you care about something so much for so long that you kind of run out of the capacity to care. Then there is depersonalization, which is kind of disengaging, right? You start to check out. And then there's this feeling of hopelessness, like this no light at the end of the tunnel. It doesn't matter what I do. Nothing is going to change anyway. So these three things are like the major signs of burnout, but how they actually show up can be things like inability to relax. It can be inability to regulate your emotions. It can be, explosive anger. It can be reactivity or tears. It can be wanting to self-soothe. It can be not wanting to get out of bed. It can be not wanting to exercise or do the things that you normally do because you're starting to check out. You're starting to feel this hopelessness. So many of those things that I just said are really, really common with perimenopause. So if you take a woman who is super busy and like just holding it all together, and then throw in this sort of dip in hormones, this cocktail of things that throw that balance off, then all of a sudden what has been manageable suddenly becomes sort of untenable. It becomes overwhelming. It feels like you can't cope with what you were just getting by with before.
Yeah.
As shit as it feels when you're in it, it's a very good opportunity, I think, to take stock and prioritize what is really important to me. I think that the statistics of women's mental health in perimenopause and menopause, the statistics about high-powered women who quit their jobs, the statistics about even, suicidal ideation, that utter feeling of hopelessness, I think that they are very, very serious, real things that need to be addressed.
For sure.
But I also don't think that the solution is that women should just quit their jobs, that women need to just run away to a cabin and live quiet lives because this is just how it is, So I think it's about finding ways to support ourselves physically, emotionally, mentally, so that we can traverse that tricky time and come out of it better than when we went into it.
Yeah.
And that takes mindfulness. Like it takes intentionality, I should say.
We'll be right back after this.
Perimenopause can actually start in your 40s. Declining estrogen production during perimenopause brings on changes to menstrual cycles and often the onset of hot flushes, night sweats, mood swings, and sexual problems. Promensal Peri is specifically designed for perimenopausal women and can help relieve these common menopausal symptoms. Promensal Peri is available at leading pharmacies across Australia and offers a cost-effective treatment at under $1 a day. When things start to change, try Promensal Peri. Always read the label and follow the directions for use.
Okay, we're back. Definitely. Well, let's hone in on the work environment first. For women that are like high achievers or they have a strong work ethic, how do we go about creating a better balance with our working selves? Like how do we, if we've got, we're under the pump, we've got a lot on, how do we say to ourselves, I'm not going to take all this on board. I'm not going to become stressed. It's like that whole thing of manage your stress better. That's the way to deal with stress. But it's like, it's all very well when you're in it and you can't even think straight because stress has got you crazy.
Absolutely. I think that there's a couple of prongs. There's a couple of prongs to this. Firstly, a lot of women keep saying yes and keep piling onto their already full plate because they don't want to be seen as not coping. They don't want to be seen as weak. They don't want to let anybody down. So there's firstly boundaries, okay? Understanding when you are at capacity. If there is more stuff that needs to go onto your plate, then having really vulnerable or frank conversations with what can I put down to pick this up, and being able to recognize that it's okay to actually have those conversations because we're just kind of programmed to think that we need to be bots. We can't be human about it. We have to just forge on through, get it done, grit your teeth, suck it up. All of that sort of really like crappy talk that we often say inside our own heads instead of going, okay, this is actually not feeling tenable. It's not feeling doable. It's certainly not feeling pleasant. How do we renegotiate the workload? Yeah. But I think that other thing that is really important is recognizing sometimes we are under the pump. And that's life. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We've got deadlines. We've got things that people are expecting stuff. We might have a week or a month where it is particularly busy, and we know that there is a bit of downtime coming or a bit of a quieter period on its way. And this is when I really bring in the idea of having regular moments to reset your nervous system so that you are not continuously shaking your can of soda all day. And what I mean by that is if you imagine that you wake up and you're like a can of soda, right? Soft drink, and you rush around to get the kids, find the shoes, sign the forms, whatever. You're shaking your can, right? And then you get in the car and you get into traffic and there's beeping and there's whatever and you're shaking the can. And you get to work and you're all like flustered and then you whack down a double espresso or whatever. Yeah. You come in, you've got all the deadlines, you're shaking the can, right? So all day, all you're doing is shaking the can until you get home and you're like, oh, now maybe one thing will trigger you and you'll just start shouting. Or you might start crying or, things like that. You start to feel like, it's just too much. Yeah. Or perhaps you might be like, okay, I need to take the edges off. So I'm going to crack a bottle of wine. I'm going to open that tub of ice cream, like whatever it is. I'm going to have the ice cream and the wine and do all of the things and just like binge Netflix because I just, right. Directly. And I just need to
switch off.
Yeah, defrag, right? Don't anyone come anywhere near me because I got nothing left for the day. So imagine then if instead of continuously shaking the can all day, you had these little moments where you kind of, I don't know, like cracked the pressure in the can just a little bit to ease the pressure. So you sort of maintain this steady state of equilibrium that can be a bit heightened. Sure, a little bit of stress is not a bad thing. It's just when we sort of tip over into that adrenaline, cortisol, running on so busy, and you can feel it in your body, right? You can really feel it in your body. So having regular little reset moments throughout the day can really make all the difference to your nervous system and keeping you on a bit of more of an even keel and stopping you from exploding.
Can you give some examples of what those little moments might look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is like looking into the rest, right? The rest component of the Mars bar. So rest can be sleep. We love sleep. Sleep is excellent. Catching 8 solids a night. If you can do it, brilliant. If you can have an afternoon nap under your desk and no one will notice, highly recommend it. But for the most part, it's going to be 30 seconds to 5 minutes of a restorative activity. So restorative activity is when you're looking at something that helps to bring you back into the present moment, helps to regulate your breathing, regulate your heart rate, bring everything back down to this sort of state of calm and peace. Things like, doing a mindfulness exercise, doing some box breathing, or then there's the double breath intake, which is you breathe in once and then you breathe in again. Right? So it's like it's a long breath followed by a short, sharp breath when you think that you're finished.
Also good for curing hiccups, just FYI.
Oh, is that right? I love that. I've learned something new today. Thank you, Zoe. But also getting up, having a stretch, going and looking out the window for 20 seconds, having a cup of tea, having a chat, all these little things that when we're super busy, we tend to think, oh, my God, I've got no time. I can't. 2 minutes. Are you crazy? How often do you think, do you skip lunch when you're really busy or you've needed to pee for the last hour and a half, but you haven't gone? So it's about recognizing when you're under the pump, these things help to keep you calm. what actually happens biologically as well is that we get better focused, right? You're giving yourself an opportunity to rest your weary brain, to give it a moment to change, have a pattern interrupt, change what it's thinking about. And then when you come back to what you're doing, you actually have better focus. You have a greater capacity to concentrate for longer.
Right.
So rather than just like trying to push on through and be like, no, I need to concentrate for this next 6 hours, having these regular breaks actually gives you a greater concentration for a time span.
Right.
So the thing is, you think that you don't have time to do it, but when you do take these moments, whether it's 30 seconds or 2 minutes regularly, you actually have greater focus. You get more done. We are more productive, right? So we don't want to be all about more productivity. You have to do more, all right? But it's just interesting to note that you think that you need to push through to be more productive, but when you actually have these little breaks, you get more shit done.
And I think probably it would be very sensible to actually, if you know that you've got a crazy day, you know, do some sort of alarms or some sort of way of notifying, because you get swept up in what you're doing, and then even if you know in your head, I should be taking these brain breaks, you suddenly look up and 3 hours have passed. So something that it might help to actually, you know, be proactive about making sure you know when you're going to stop.
So how do we do anything in our busy days right now, right? It goes in the diary, right? Yeah. Otherwise you would never remember your doctor's appointment. You would never remember to pick your kid up. You would never, I mean, you're from school, yes, but you're like,
I know it.
Okay, there was just that one time, all right. But yeah, you put it in your phone. Also, if you do them at the same time, so you might not be able to do it at 11 o'clock every day because, you know, someone might stick a meeting in or whatever. But if you know that sometime around 11 or sometime between 11 and 12, you take 5 minutes, and it becomes your habit. Again, it's creating these habits that you no longer need to think about because they just become second nature to you.
Okay, so let's look at how rest is then different to play.
Sure. It is somewhat of a subjective thing, right? So someone is going to think that yoga is restful and somebody else is going to think that yoga is excruciating, okay? Some people are going to think that hiking is fun and other people are going to think that it's work. So really it's about creating your own personal lists of what work, rest and play are. Now work, obviously we do lots of, and that's really clear when it is work, right? The thing that we do for money. However, the home, housework, cooking, gardening is one of those ones. Is it work? Is it rest? Is it play? It depends. Right? It depends. If you're schlepping a wheelbarrow, it's work. If you're weeding and you find that a mindful practice, then it can be rest, you know. So it's really about finding the things that are restful or playful for you. And I think as adults, I will often say to my clients, you know, my one-on-one clients that I coach, what do you do for fun? You know, what do you do when you're not working or you're not doing the house stuff? And they'll be like, you know, I sometimes I play with my kids. Realistically, we're talking about something that is enjoyable, something that is fun just for you. It's okay. It's nice to do stuff with your family. It's also nice to have something that is just your own.
And again, that doesn't really count as Netflix or scrolling through your Instagram.
It really doesn't. It really doesn't. And they are like their rest in sheep's clothing. What? Something in wood. You know what I'm trying to say.
I do.
They're actually they're false rest. It actually sucks. It depletes your energy rather than like replenishes your energy. Play is something where, and it's so interesting, I think, as adults, because we really do often forget to do it. We do forget to prioritize it, and we often forget what it is that gets us into that flow state. So when you lose track of time, when you are so engrossed in what you're doing, when the balance of the challenge versus the reward is just in that sweet spot, so you are completely engaged and it's really satisfying. And a lot of adults just let their responsibility eat their playful side.
Yeah. And I think a lot of us also just really struggle to give ourselves downtime. Like, you know, you finish doing the laundry and then you're like, okay, what else should I be doing now? Like, because there will always be something, right?
Of course.
Like, there will always be something in the house that needs, like, a drawer that's really needs clearing out or whatever, you know. And I do find, just giving yourself permission to have downtime is something that I think especially women do really struggle with.
Absolutely. And it's that time. So whether you're doing some kind of class, whether you're joining somebody else or you're doing it solo, I feel like for women there's often this sort of belief that all your spare time, because if you're working a lot and then, you know, you've got all the weekend activities, whatever, then all your spare time needs to still be with family or being productive, like this idea of productivity, rather than something purely for pleasure, purely because it feels good, with no, you know, designs for it to be something that makes money, that it has a useful outcome. It just is. It's just fun. It's just joyful. It's just nice, you know.
And let's just drum in again why that is just so vitally important for us to have playtime.
Yeah, absolutely. Your brain loves it. Your brain lights up like a Christmas tree. So when you are doing something that is a little bit unpredictable, something that is new, something that challenges these new sort of synapses and neural pathways, your brain thrives. And what it does is it creates new sort of pathways for problem solving, problem solving, working stuff out, new sense of achievement, new sense of satisfaction, new sense of pride. Like, there's so much that goes on when you're at play. And I think that creative problem solving actually is vitally important because it has crossover into lots of different areas of our lives and we don't even realize it, you know? So having that sort of capacity to problem solve, critically think, things like that, even if it's like working out a problem on a painting, for instance. I took up painting in COVID, right? Yeah. So let's just say I'm looking at it. I can see that it's not working, but I don't know exactly why. I need to go into that sort of critical thinking part to be like, okay, well, and curiosity, right? Yeah. What if I did this? What if I changed that? And then when I work it out, again, I get the ding, 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 right? All the happy hormones, all the dopamine in my brain. But having that capacity to critically think like that has direct crossover in other areas of our lives. And it's like muscle, right? It's a muscle that you have the opportunity to flex. Yeah. And the more you flex it, the stronger it gets. So, yeah, play is really important. You know, whether you're doing, you know, it could be a crossword, it could be Sudoku, it could be art, it could be, you know, pottery, it could be music, it could be anything that you think is fun. I often see people thinking it's a waste of time. It's frivolous, it's silly. So, you know, and it makes me sad. Yeah. What about all our little inner children and all the joy and the fun and the play they want to be having?
Exactly. I mean, I guess for a lot of people, the big question is, how do I fit that in? Yeah. How do I fit it in? Like,
same way that you fit in going to the doctor, same way that you fit in going to the gym. You put it in your diary and you prioritize it. This is the thing. If we look back at this chocolate bar, we look back at the Mars bar, nougat is the biggest, chunkiest part, right? That is your work, right? Yeah. It is going to take up the biggest chunks of your time. Rest, again, that's the next biggest part. And that, you know, we have the biological human need for sleep. That's going to happen, you know, regardless. Otherwise, you know, but that doesn't count as rest. So then we've got to put in these little chunks, you know, on the weekend, you need to have downtime. If you've had a super busy week, you need that time to recharge and refresh. After work, you don't want to be going out and caning it every night. You know, you need to have these sort of restful moments so that you can prepare for the work. Then with the play, that's a tiny little bit, right? So you don't have to be doing something every single day. If you did, or if you did 5 minutes every day working on a project, or if you did 2 hours once a month, right?
Yeah.
It's about knowing that you've got that time set aside, knowing that that creates the whole picture of you when you prioritize that. So, but it really is about discipline.
Yeah.
Just like going to the gym.
Yeah.
Right? Which also can be work, rest and play.
Yes.
Depending on what you're doing and how you feel about it.
Yeah. So I think, there probably are quite a few women out there that just haven't played in such a long time that might really struggle to even think about what they might do. Have you got any advice for kind of, working out,
Yeah. How do I rediscover?
Where would I even start? Like,
how do I rediscover that
if
playful?
someone's like, I hate, I've never been into art.
I'm not creative. I'm not creative.
Yeah.
I think one of the keys is to think about the things that you loved when you were young and see if you could either do some of that or is there a grown-up version, right? So maybe you liked climbing trees and now you can do indoor rock climbing. Maybe you liked going to the park and now you could find a sort of a grown-up version and go and do sort of hikes. What doesn't make you cringe? What does make you curious, does make you feel expansive? And what makes you feel a sense of awe, a sense of wonder, a sense of possibility? And also, I think that we really need to give ourselves permission to be crap at something. We spend so much of our lives being put together, and managing the perception of ourselves and all that sort of stuff. So going and allowing yourself to be a learner, go and be a beginner, go to a dance class and be completely out of time and allow that to be okay. Just find the pleasure in that.
Yeah.
But there are so many different classes and different things that you've never even thought of. There are these little subsections of people who get together and do the most random things, and it's joyful, So and I would also like to challenge that everyone actually is creative, and you might not pick up a pencil and think that you're an amazing sketcher. But creativity comes out in so many different ways, whether it is, baking, whether it is making, creating, gardening, sewing. There are so many different avenues for creativity, and just exploring something that you've been curious about.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, let's just finish by talking about boundaries because, we're going to have to set some if we want to, have this time for ourselves. Why are they so important, and what advice do you give to make us better at setting them if we're the kind of person that always says yes to everything and wants to please everyone all the time?
Boundaries are such a difficult one, I think, because although we hear the word bandied around a lot, there is still a lot of sort of ambiguity about what they are, when do you use them, how do they work, and how do I uphold a boundary or put one in place without making everybody else angry, or letting other people down? So firstly, I think a boundary, when we look at it, is what is okay for you and what is not okay for you. And it's okay if that changes, right?
Yeah.
So recognizing that maybe you said yes to something and now really you're not feeling it, being able to listen to your body, listen to your energy levels, listen to your ick factor, right? And then I think having really, really clear communication around what that is, and remembering that every time you say no to something, you're saying yes to yourself. So when you haven't been great at boundaries before and you're starting to do little baby steps towards boundaries, I think starting small, having some really little ones that are fairly inconsequential so that you can build your muscle and then allow yourself to explore doing the bigger ones. Definitely. I mean, you could just jump straight in the deep end as well and be like, actually, I know that I've always done this in the home or I've always done this at work, but I don't want to be that person anymore. This is why, and let's work out how we can still get this thing done and it doesn't fall on my shoulders all the time. I think the first thing really is being very, very honest with yourself and then having the courage to express that.
Yeah. And then not go back on it.
And then not go back on it. Consistency, right? You need to retrain. You need retraining the people around you on what is okay for you and what is not okay for you.
All right. Laundry, I'm looking at you.
Yeah.
Look out, everyone.
Absolutely. Training your children to do their own sorting and folding. That's the big one in my house at the moment. It is happening. It's definitely happening. There's still bribery involved, but like it just means that we're not having to do it all the time.
Yeah.
Because, oh my God, Mount Washmore, it never goes away. It's like this self-replenishing monster.
You could do 5 art classes in there.
That's right.
Well, look, unfortunately, that's all we have time for today. But thank you so much, Danielle, for sharing those incredible insights with us.
That's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. It's been great to have a chat.
And listeners, thank you for joining us as well. If you liked this episode, we'd love you to rate, review and subscribe. And we hope you'll join us for next week's episode. Meanwhile, for more information about living your best life at midlife, pick up a copy of Prevention Magazine. I'm Zoe Mernier. See you next time.